is not holding. Because what we know is that if you use CBD to treat epilepsy, pure CBD, yes, you get a good response. But when that CBD is mixed with THC, you get a synergistic response that is even better. So when you look across the whole spectrum of CBD, THC, flavonoids, terpenoids, and all of this, we do not know yet what the relative ratios of all of this has to do with the therapeutic effect. So therefore, in dealing with the development of the research, that is a wide open area of research because we do not know yet. So as the head of the CLA says, he will not, using that his instrument, curtail the innovation of the research. He couldn't do it. As a scientist, he just could, he doesn't have it's not in his DNA to do it. Now, we know that in relation to standards, if you have been using, if the Jamaican people, my or grandmothers, etc., have been using ganja for many, many years, and they bottle it, and they allow it to ferment, etc., and they use it for all sorts of things. Coal this, that, coal this, all sorts of things. That is what you call traditional use. It gets its legitimacy because it has been used over many years without causing any harm. That is not to say that under certain conditions it won't cause it. And you have to be careful. Now, the research now, moving to the next level from traditional, right, to edibles. If you make a chocolate and you are infusing it with THC ganja, and it is over a certain milligram per kilogram, and can therefore have a psychoactive effect, what's going to happen? You can't give it to children. You can't sell it. Because the science is telling you that, in fact, there are risks. Or scientists in charge of the CLA, based on the fact that there are doctors on his committee which know, in terms of therapeutic practice, that there are sorts of risks. It won't happen. Now, you move to another standard. Now, once it is an edible as a food, it qualifies for HACCP standards. And you have to look at the whole food processing process. And the good thing about Colorado is that the persons who were doing the edibles was, before he did that, right, a person who knew and was practicing HACCP standards to food processing. So it was part of his standard operating practice. Now, you move to another level, nutraceuticals. A different criteria for evaluating, different research criteria. And by the time you reach a pharmaceutical, moving from nutraceutical to pharmaceutical, the cost just moving from nutraceutical to pharmaceutical is $1.4 billion. How many researchers in Jamaica have $1.4 billion to move from nutraceuticals?
All right. Yeah.
US.
Yeah. Okay, all right, thanks, Dr. Davis. We have what I'm going to...
That gives you a perspective.
Yeah, Amanda wants to respond.
I just wanted to say about, I think it's absolutely true, in treatment, in medicine, quite often one wants high THC. We're currently doing research in Madrid on treatment of cancer and trying different proportions of THC and CBD. And at University College London, we're also testing different proportions. And I think it's an unknown science at the moment, and I very much look forward to doing much more science here, where it's, I'm sure, quicker and be better to do do. But that is something at the moment only the science is beginning to do, but definitely THC is very, very valuable in medication and
All right. Okay.
I'm very glad for this discussion on standards. Rastafari Indigenous Village, we have worked step by step at trying to achieve the standards, and the standards to do at every level. When you invite people into your home, you have to ensure that one, they're safe, they're secure, that they're informed. And one of the things that I had in terms of, to really speak to some of the things Dan was saying, is that we do have the tea house, we do have the space, we have the yoga, we have all the traditional knowledge. This exists already. But in developing this, we have had to go very slowly, step by step, to ensure that we have the standard operational procedures in place, and that people are properly trained, and that where we have traditional offerings, we give that information to our guests, people who we invite into our home and into our space and into our lives. So we ensure that there is a complete understanding, and I think this gives a lot of scope for training. This is an area where in discussion about the presentation, we need to look at how we train and we make sure that our small businesses actually understand that when you are sharing, when we are sharing, that we give the correct information. And that this is a way of also protecting ourselves to say, listen, this is this fabulous soap, we have made it, it's made out of marijuana, it's made out of lemongrass, and this traditionally has been the information. So while we are in a very new sector, this is not yet an industry, as our sisters here, we're standing up, we're discussing. This is not yet an industry for us. We're building. And we have to ensure that before, we don't spoil it before we even start. And this is very important for us. When you have people who are coming to your space and something happen, them say they come to Rasta Village and them yam this, or they bathe in this, or they have a bush bath and this happened to them, we have to protect ourselves. As we get into business, as we get into the industry, work very closely with the agencies to develop the standards and to document them. Because when we have all our wonderful, fabulous teas and everything that's there, we must make sure that we document them and make sure that we claim them before somebody else claims it. What, you having this again? So that's just my comment, because I think training is very important as well.
I just want to make it clear, and Minister can, when we talk about taxation in Jamaica, unless things have changed, all matters of taxation are the remit of the Ministry of Finance. Our responsibility at the CLA will be in discussions with the Ministry of Finance to decide what the fee structures are going to be. And the fee structures are important because you understood what is involved in building a global industry. Somebody has to pay for that. Now the government of Jamaica is doing all they can to try to provide the support. In fact, probably the minister will want to announce what has been done as regards the money already provided for the CLA, and he will at an appropriate time. But the taxation, a lot of people have spoken about it, a lot of people focus on it. There will be no sort of taxation or fees that are charged in a manner that will disadvantage the traditional grower, those who want to legitimize themselves. But you have to bear in mind that in order to support the infrastructure required, it has to be paid for. This has to be done in discussion with the Ministry of Finance. And remember as well that we have growers representatives besides members from the Rastafarian community that sit on the CLA's board. So you can exert your influence through the growers representatives. And if you need the details on who sits on the board, we are happy to share that.
Okay.
Let me just, I first of all want to concur with what Dr. Gordon said. But the Ministry of Industry, the matters of taxation, and particularly as it affects industry, the Ministry of Industry does have a very strong voice in that discussion.
at the level of interministerial dialogue and ultimately at the cabinet level. And just to make the points, some of which have already been made and I'll just amplify it, which is the intention is really, it is not, this industry is not being driven to raise revenue. It's not the only focus. It is one of the focus because it's actually sustained by infrastructure, which has to be built in government. There are certain things that government must put in place and arbitrate among various conflicting interests. So we all have to accept that an infrastructure is necessary.
International people and ourselves, through ignorance, has been giving away our strains. And right now, all the strains that rules the world is the strains that are from Afghanistan, Jamaica, Mexico, Colombia, and now and these are the land races. Let me be specific. The land races of these nations. And now we are in a situation where we are doing decriminalization, building an industry. We are not considering that other countries' land races are being harvested illegally. And through these conventions and protocols, we can protect our cultivars. Jamaica has stopped on from 2012, and we have to consider these protocols to protect our cultivars, because that is the reason why we can't even truly access our land race of Jamaica. Because a lot of strains came into Jamaica for the past 40 years, is mixing into Jamaican strains. So now we have strains which is like a melting pot. Our true land race is almost lost because of cross-pollination. So we have to consider now, after all our strains that we have, our original land races, we have developed through interaction with other countries and getting seeds back and forth within the illegal situation. We now have strains that have Afghanistan's DNA and other DNAs in it. And because of over the time of adaptation through breeding and growing, we have something unique. And what we are really harvesting in the medical industry is the different cannabinoids. And that is why we were rated as the best product. Ganja, Jamaican ganja is the best. It's not really the Jamaican ganja. It's our climate and where we are situated on the earth. The exact spot where we are situated on the earth is only probably about one place in Africa. So it doesn't matter wherever you get these cultivars from, when you bring them to Jamaica and grow them here with standards, you will get some of the best cannabinoids from it that can be used for research. So we have to protect our cultivars.
Okay. All right. All right, will you take the next question as well?
My name's Lee Coulter, and I'm the president of GGS Structures, Inc., and we do a lot of grow systems through Canada and the U.S. We've dealt with pretty much every U.S. state, as well as having people from Israel and Uruguay come and see us about how to do some better cultivation. So I'm also the Canadian branch of the Jamaican family, so while I appreciate that I look at this through imperfect foreign eyes, I do have Jamaica in my heart. And I have three concerns with what has been presented for you to consider as you move forward. But before I get to my concerns, I want to say some things that I think are really terrific. I really applaud you for the transparency that you are putting forward to explain and to invite the different key people into the discussion. I think that is critical to the success. I also applaud the tremendous progress that has been made. Truly, we have dealt in almost every U.S. state with all the different regulations that are there and all sorts of various levels of standards, and you really are making a strong effort, and you've made tremendous progress. And also, Minister Hilton, I think you're right on the mark with the global focus. For long-term sustainability for Jamaica, we really do need to look at the export market. So here are my 3 things for you to consider moving forward. First, I do not understand why for your pilot project you would bring seeds from outside Jamaica. I'm sure there are good reasons, but on the basics of, basic scientific principle, with you acknowledging that Jamaica has different water, different soil, different environment, I would not change the seed in doing my pilot project. I would find a way, if possible, to get Jamaican seed to bring that in for the testing. And at risk of being, considered a bit of a heretic for the scientists here, more important than science, I would say, the global image that Jamaica gives by importing seed for your test market. It's not right, but as a foreigner, when I read in the papers that Jamaica is importing seed, I did a little happy Canadian dance because all my Canadian customers are thinking they are going to have a market here. And I did and I cried a few tears for my Jamaican family because your value is the heritage of the ganja that you have here. And it doesn't give it wrong. So that's the first point. My second point is if you truly want to support the local SMEs. I have concern with a comment that was made today about the traditional growing cannot compete with the greenhouse growing. And so there will be a division in some way, which I fully do not understand, and I appreciate that. But I have a concern as a business person that I would not want, if I was a Jamaican, I would not want a system that was designed to help encourage a lower level of competitiveness from my traditional growers. I do not have the solution because clearly Jamaica does not have the money to build the facilities we built in Canada. But perhaps the licensing could be structured in such a way that greenhouse licenses could be for a smaller footprint, a smaller square footage for greenhouses, a larger square footage for traditional growing, so that the opportunity to produce the same end product is there, and thereby field growers, you seem to, I'm a greenhouse person, but you're a field guy. Field growers would then have the opportunity to grow the same end product, make the same profit yield with a smaller capital investment, and therefore encourage the field farmers to also adapt technology better for field production. Also, you could allow for field producers to transfer their licenses to greenhouse license if they saw a value in a similar square footage blueprint. So you say in a greenhouse, they get 3 to 5 crop rotations. And they grow smaller plants because they can get 3 to 5 rotations. They can grow smaller plants and get more bud that way. For field, you are going to grow big trees. Okay? So it's a different process, it's a different thought process, and there might be a way to build that into the licensing. And if anybody wants to talk to me, I can talk more on that. I don't want to take up too much more time. So then my third comment, and both UTEC and UWI have spoken with my company. My third comment, Minister Hilton especially, is for Jamaica to be taken seriously on a world market, you need a world-class plant research facility. Yesterday, there was a comment made that the research was going to be going on and that there would be transportation protocols to bring the plants from the growers. And while on a world scale research, it's important to partner with the business people, if you do not have a facility that in addition to the labs, like the labs, you know, the global accreditation there is fantastic, but the labs are only part of the problem. You need to grow the plant in a facility that when people from the UK comes, when people from the Netherlands come, when people from Canada come, that, you know, the Canadian scientists say, wow, this is even better than what we have in Canada. If they come and they see the current facility at UTEC, they see a small, not well-equipped facility, and you won't get the global club. Might not be right, but you need to find a way to get UTEC, UWI, both of them, or one of them. You need to find a way to get them a world-class facility for research that will bring in world-class scientists. So that's my 2 cents. I wish you luck.
All right, thank you. All right, going back to the question on biodiversity and IP protocols, I wonder if Diane, you would want to kick off on the first question that was asked. or Andres.
I missed the name of the last speaker who raised the questions, but I have to say that thank you for putting those points on the table. I don't want to comment too much on them at this point in time, just to say that some of the discussions that we've had, some of these issues have been raised and these concerns have been raised. And I think it's really important that somebody from an international perspective puts these on the table so that people locally don't think that other persons locally are raising them for other reasons. To let you know that we're aware of the issues, the concerns about greenhouse versus open field, and also that because of the representation, Prophet Greg and others, you know, we believe at the CLA, this is the first time we're engaging publicly. We have a lot of information. There are persons who have said some of the assumptions about some of the differentials and ability to produce quality and so on may not necessarily be supported by fact. So at this stage, as we look at how we proceed, you know, let us just say that there are many things under discussion and under consideration.
There were 4 instead of 3 questions raised. But I'll deal with 3, since 3 directly relate to what? To the whole question of standards. Let's deal with the importation first. For testing, the Bureau is not an importing agency. The Bureau is a testing agency and a standards agency. Now, if we accept that the only way that Jamaica's industry can be sustainable is that it has to do what is known as export trade, are you saying, or are we saying, that we must never allow seeds from anywhere to come into our jurisdiction? No, we can't say that. Okay, let us proceed further. If we say that seeds have to come in, what are the protocols? Do we have any at this particular point in time? I can tell you, we don't. But we have to put in protocols before the seeds reach the border. And we have to put in protocols as to what are the conditions relating to the criteria for those seeds to come in. There are 5 sanitary standards internationally, which we have to do in even providing the list of things that we would expect. Now, we can do that theoretically and hope that it works. Or we could test it practically from a source from abroad, coming in under the conditions which we, right? And so when the protocol hits the Jamaican and customs says X, Y, Z, and the inspectorate and compliance says, what is this? And the quarantine says, what is this? We have to put everything through a testing protocol in order to determine exactly what. Say, for example, a traditional farmer or some person in Jamaica has a partnership arrangement to bring in seeds for whatever reason, for research, with their thing, to do cloning, to do this, to do that. Should we restrict? The answer is no. But in order for it to come in, if you do not have the standards, you are not going to get very far. And so, if you look at the pilot test has to do with two components. One component, the tracking of the seed coming from Canada into Jamaica and setting up those protocols as it comes along to test exactly a number of things, including what we call chain of custody. The chain of custody starts from they get the order, and a lot of phytosanitary standards have to come in. Coming in to the border, how it is handled, when it crosses the border, who takes custody of it. And all of this has to be tracked, traced, and tested. If there is something wrong with that, with any part of it, we have to do the analysis in a step-by-step way, evaluate. Now, when it comes in, we also have to look at the greenhouse in that scenario. Now, you may use a particular greenhouse methodology. America may use another particular greenhouse methodology. But do we have the standards for greenhouse methodology?
Yes, we do.
No, I'm saying in Jamaica. In Jamaica. You have it in Canada. It's a different ecosystem. It's a different ecosystem. We have therefore collected what we call best practice greenhouse, having done the studies abroad. And we say, even if we think it is, let us test it in our situation. And so it goes through all the stages of the life cycle in our situation, using their different methodologies. And so it is part of the experimentation for developing standards. You have to follow a strict international protocol in order to establish the standards, because there is no industry that is exporting ganja in the world. And since we have to do it in order to build an industry, it has to go through this particular testing protocol. In the same way, for the traditional, it has to do with the development of their IP and their branding, and also getting information, both quantitative information and qualitative information for documentation that you necessarily need to get the IP, intellectual property rights. And so, the test pilot project will have two components: those that you can track and trace coming from abroad in Jamaica using that particular methodology, those that have track and trace to do with branding, etc., and transitioning from illegal to legal. And we have brought all these instruments. Nobody has said that if somebody has seeds in Jamaica, they can't do it through a greenhouse. But then again, are they going to use the same artificial means that you have for lighting? Are they going to use the techniques and methodology for increasing yield? There are many different techniques for yield increase, right? But is the particular methodology viable in a high humidity, sunlight, hard water, this, that, all different conditions with different insect species and different microbiology. Because if we do not have those standards and protect, we would never be able to protect our local industries. And so this is why we have to do the testing and using different scenarios, out of which we can develop standards.
With
Okay.
respect, Professor Davis.
Not much has been said as to what differentiates medicinal products versus recreational products. So something needs to be addressed about how those are defined. Edibles can be considered medicinal, but they can also be considered recreational. So what exactly is going to be put in place to outline what differentiates those from each other? How the value-added production is done and how that defines and protects the intellectual property of the producers within that country. So a wine cannot be called a particular name or type of wine if it's not grown in a certain area with a certain seed or followed by a certain process. Something like that is going to be critical to protect Jamaica's future in this global ganja industry. Already we've seen where countries such as the Netherlands and Canada have been boasting about strains that they've developed, but they call them Jamaican such and such. Jamaican blueberry haze. It can't be Jamaican if it's not grown in Jamaica. So something needs to be put in place to protect the future.
All right.
Now,
Okay. All right.
as a representative of a company that is focused on producing high quality medicinal products here in Jamaica, I am speaking not just on behalf of the company, but on behalf of other potential producers, which will be based here in Jamaica, because at the end of the day, if we're not able to protect our raw material and its cultivars, as it's been previously stated as, then we won't be able to protect the value of the products which are produced, because everything comes from the source.
Right.
So, one.
All right.
As President, the viewer has a lot of experience in the standards developing wines from a whole host of different products. And we do not, I mean, this shouldn't pose a particular problem. And in the same way that you can, in the liquor industry, you can in fact quantify the grade or the amount of alcoholic content. In the same way, you will do the same with its THC content or what have you, depending on the psychoactive effects. Right? We will have already had those standards. And so therefore, I don't see it as a problem. And the fact is that now that the Bureau is now acting more what we call consumer-centric, and especially we're there to enable the development of new business, working with the entities in the Bureau, right? We are sure that we'll be able to do a lot of things to assist.
All right.
John May, to the person who's doing the wine production, I think one of the things, two things you need to be aware of. One is, as Prof said, THC must be less than 1%. That's the first thing, and that's important in whatever cannabis ingredient you have, because it has to conform with that requirement at the moment. Secondly is the question of calling products wine in the international market. You need to be, particularly for Europe, if you want to export to Europe, wine has to be made from a grape. That is the definition of wine internationally. So just to give you a case in point, when I was at Ray & Nephew, we had to change the name of Red Label wine to Red Label Aperitif to get it into the UK market and onto a UK supermarket shelf. So you've got to be aware of the market access requirements for whatever market you want to go into. So you may have to call your product something other than wine. So again, market access is the key shot there. And to the gentleman who, from EG Wellness, who was talking about the appellation d'origine, that whole appellation is really the same as the geographic indication. So the geographic indication, which we have succeeded in registering for jerk, for rum, and for coffee, Jamaican coffee. That is the same regulation under which we can protect Jamaican cannabis. However, we have to ensure the recognition of it, and more importantly, we have to be able to protect it. And you have to know that this can be a lengthy process going through the courts. In the case of the UK, I'll give you another example. Pick a Pepper sued a company for knocking off or ripping off their trademark, and they were successful in that. So that is the route you have to go if you want to protect your GI. People will try to use the name Jamaica because the brand is so strong. And we have to be aware of that, and we have to be prepared to challenge them in courts.
I would just advise you to take a look at my statement. You may not have been here when I delivered it, but the entire component was focused on the IP and the protection of our brand. And the Madrid Protocol is in train. Once that legislation is being drafted now, but beyond that, we're really in a very advanced stage. I'm hoping that in November I'll be able to table it in Parliament. So we're very advanced in a range of IP area to ensure that we're able to protect the brand in all its forms, including the Madrid Protocol.
All right, Minister, I think he also posed a question about the export of raw material versus value added.
Well, let me say this. Let's have a frank conversation about this, huh? Because depending on where you are in the industry and where you want to position yourself, that becomes, in the value chain, that becomes a greater or lesser consideration. What I do see is that we are, as a government, mindful that our focus has to be on value added. And therefore, we've had the lessons of bauxite and a range of products where we have the raw material and those are exported. Bauxite has its own consideration because the reason was not, the value chain was not developed largely, was about the absence of energy and reasonable price energy. We don't have those same kind of considerations here in Jamaica. And so the policy, well, what's the policy? The interest is in the value chain. We are, as we said, we wanted to put a standard-led and a market-driven approach to it. Part of standard is the question we just finished discussing, is about IP. We believe that there's one view that says they give the level of protection that we're building into our industry, including the IP, that it will be in the interest of growers to get that value added and to export value added products rather than raw materials. Whether we should put that in the form of a law or policy is a question that we're discussing. Okay? But we recognize the issue. We are looking at it. But as we say, we have to ensure that government doesn't engineer an industry that in the end there's no market for the product. So we're looking at it from all angles.
Okay, thanks.
How was it that those 2 or 3 labs, was there a list that was sent out for us to figure out how do we meet this accreditation to be able to meet your standard? From my lack of knowledge, I saw something from the paper that this was going to be announced and that was going to be announced. What if there are those out there that have the ability, the funding, all the necessary things to put up a world-class facility or build it? How do they fund? Because first of all, just like when this process, when distributors or exhibitors wanted to bring in stuff, we were told that the Ministry of Tourism was the person that we called. We call the Ministry of Tourism and they don't know. Who has that list? And maybe Dr. God can answer the question. How do we get a lab accredited? How were those labs chosen to be accredited as the choice of whatever?
Let me just answer your frankly so you understand. let me say to you, we can, one of the choices we have is to wait until we have a perfect industry before we do anything at all. And we can do that. We can say nothing will happen until all the regulation, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. That's not what we decided to do. So we start first with our established universities, those that are in the public space, acknowledged to have certain facilities in place. That's the cautious approach. It was never in our view that nobody else can do it or do it any better. We start from first principles. Is that where it's going to end up? I don't believe so. But we start from first principles. I believe that there will come a time, I would like to see, that there will come a time when it is a far more flexible approach, clear with the criteria that we are asking for. But I'm saying to you, some people may be way ahead of themselves about ahead of the regulation and where they are. But in the end, they have to be constrained by the regulation. Or is there illegal? So that's the reality, my friend. It's a process that has started. It's getting there. But if you make your business judgment and you jump ahead of the game, I think it's time for it. If you make your business judgment and you're ahead of the game and you're found illegal, then that's a risk that you have to overcome. Right? The process is evolving. We started from first principle, and the decision was a careful decision, was work with the established institution that the world knows, the country knows, and the government is prepared to take a risk with. That it has to be evolved is true. And so if you ask for this criteria, it's a very short one, established and
all right.
Just a quick response. So, two things. We know, and we've been advised from your representatives at the CLA that the growers are very cautious at this point, and I'd like Professor McLaughlin to say something on that. But just to advise that the entire licensing regime will address your concerns. At this point, Jamaica has an international obligation. The government has to take control of every gram of cannabis that is going to be sanctioned by the government. So no private entity could at this stage be engaged. But the regulations will take that into consideration.
Just one quick comment. I think on the matter of biodiversity,
Right. Yeah,
I think the issue is actually with the signing of the Cartagena Protocol Minister, where at the end of the day there should be benefit sharing, with all the farmers and security of the material that belongs to us.
Thank you.
let me just say, it has been answered, I intended to answer, but quite frankly, again, there are a number of these conventions, and they get their ranking in terms of when we move at them, based upon a couple of factors. One of them being some conventions require legislation in order for them to take effect. Some of them are simpler. You sign them and you don't need the underpinning legislation, regulation. And those are easier to address. It is also the case that it depends on what gets priorities is what the focus is. It is clear, therefore, that the focus in building up the industry, that one of the focus now must shift to getting those biodiversity conventions squarely in place in the same way that we're moving to getting IP legislation in place. So that it shifts, and you'll see a lot more movement. And And a lot of those, some of which have not been addressed before, simply because they never had the same focus, attention, as we do now in building up the cannabis industry.
Okay, all right. No, I think I really have to call it now. No, you. No.
In relation to those international conventions, I'm aware of UNGAS 2016, which one of the major topics is supposed to be the discussion about the reform of cannabis and its scheduling according to international treaty, as well as how that will impact the financial services industry and our industry on a whole. So I just want to know if there will be any representation from the Jamaican government at UNGAS 2016, and are there any plans to participate actively or aggressively in that part of the discussion about cannabis, our part in the treaty?
And this again relates back to my previous answer. As we take certain decisions at policy level, the government resources is reordered to support those policies. We've taken a decision that we're going to build out an industry. And so, rest assured that not only will we represent that, not only will we be at UNGAS, but we'll be well prepared and ready to take on that challenge. Indeed, I would say Jamaica will lead that challenge in UNGAS.
Okay, all right. Okay, Smith. I think, the level of questions shows that there's great interest in what we have been discussing. And I think we have had a very productive few hours. So as I wrap up, I want to thank the panelists, led by Minister Hilton. Also have Professor Davidson, Dr. Andre Gordon, Diane Edwards, and Amanda Phelan. We thank them all for their participation. Yeah. Right. Yes. I must say special thanks to the Beckley Foundation for organizing this. And Countess Phelan, we really do thank you for the effort you have put in to making this happen. And also to your hardworking right hand, Eleanor Hussey. Yes. All right. So, and ladies and gentlemen, you have been a very good audience. You have been very patient, and I do appreciate it. And, we ended on a question about the General Assembly next year. And it was pointed out at the beginning that, the findings and the outcome of this session will feed into what goes into the General Assembly. And so that's part of the reason we are having this conference. So we do look forward to movement. And as I pointed out this morning, the presence of the government ministers, Minister Hilton, Minister Golden, Minister McNeil, does underscore that the government of Jamaica is committed to making this a very viable industry in Jamaica. And with that, I thank you for your participation.